بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. So tonight will be the final session for the semester to give you 2 weeks inshallah to revise some of the material. I think the examining timing has been already established. So if you're in the website, if you're in the classroom, then you should know what time it is. I actually forgot. I think it's January 4th. Yeah, January 4th, 9 o'clock in the morning, inshallah. I usually don't show up to those things, just so you know. But I usually am available with text if there's any specific questions. My questions are usually pretty clear. They're not very complicated. I'm still figuring out what the format of the exam is going to be exactly, because I tend not to care too much for dead memorization. Like, that's not what I'm aiming for. I don't want you to memorize stuff for the sake of just memorizing them. You should want to know certain things for your own sake. But I will kind of within these slides, I will clarify in the last 2 slides exactly what the format of the exam will look like in the next day or two. So just keep an eye on that, out for that, so you know what to expect if you come and write it, inshallah ta'ala. Usually, if you've attended the sessions, you've listened to the lectures, you've done some reading, then it's not. We try to set people up for success, not failure, inshallah. So today I'm just going to go through what I want you, where I want to, until the point I'm going to stop at, ask you to do some reading at the end, and then we'll pick up, not this next semester, but maybe the one after. We'll pick up with the part 3. So if this is something you want to complete or see through till the end of it, then next semester won't be Sirah, only because it's the semester that has Ramadan in it. And the one that has Ramadan in it is just slightly shorter than all the other ones, because I'm not around for 4 weeks of Ramadan or 5, and then a week after that I'm usually dead and have to be resurrected after that. So it's like 5 to 6 weeks that I'm not around. So we lose a lot of weeks. So that's a shorter semester. So I usually try to fit in a course that's a little bit shorter, which will be hadith. So hadith Nabawi for the first level of IDA is the 40 Nabawi hadith, and it usually is taught in 2 parts, like 2 courses. The first 21 in the first course, and the second 21 in the second course. So historically, I've done the first 21, and Sheikh Ziyad has done the second 21. He recently decided that he didn't want to do any of these. He didn't want to do this anymore. He wanted to do something different. So I'm going to take on the second 21. So that's what I'll be doing. I'll be doing the second 21 hadith. You attended the first 21 with me in the past. You can do, and you've already attended the second 21 with Sheikh Ziyad. So you finished hadith. Then do something different. If you have not attended Sheikh Ziyad's second 21 hadith, then you can attend that with me next semester, inshallah, throughout between January and April, and that way you'll have. And if you haven't attended any of the hadith, like you've never attended a hadith course yet, then you can just attend this. You don't have to have attended the first one to attend the second one. You can just attend it right away. Part 1, part 2, they're not sequential, but you have to have both to have the credits. Okay. Sirah, it's 1 credit, but it's going to be more than 1. So it's going to be the 3 parts for the first level of ID, and then 1 for the second level and 1 for the third. So getting the credit for ID for Sirah takes 3 parts. I was trying to put it in 2, but I failed this semester. We weren't able to get beyond the 10th year of his bi'ath alayhi salatu wasalam, or his prophethood. As I pointed out to you last week, there's always going to be a year in life, or sometimes more than 1 year, that will stand out in terms of what occurred in it. A lot will happen sometimes in a short period of time for you. And then you'll have these periods of smooth sailing or just plateauing where not much is going on. And those years will all mush together. You don't even remember them. Like, I don't know, between 1990 whatever and I don't remember you just don't remember these years because not much occurred. But then there'll be 1 year where a lot happened and it affected your life heavily. So the Prophet ﷺ, we can point out certain years that things happened that made. So the 10th year of his prophethood, ﷺ, a decade into it, was a very significant year. A lot of things happened that year. Abu Talib passed away. Khadija passed away. Right before that, the Hisar of the Shi'b, the boycott of Banu Hashim ended, and then he lost the 2 most important people to him, alayhi in sequence within a very short period of time. He did the journey to a Ta'if, which was extremely detrimental to his to his status and to his da'wah. Isra and Mi'raj happened. Approaching the tribes during the Hajj period happened, and then and all this occurred within 11 months. So that's a lot of things to occur, and the significance of each is worthy of its own, of its own 2 or 3 hour lecture, just to talk about what actually happened within them. And you'll find it in the Sirah alayhi salam, there'll be like 2 years, like year 11 and 12 and 13 in Mecca. We can probably fit in like a 25-minute talk. Like I could probably fit it all in because I don't know exactly what happened. I just don't have all the narrations from that period. I know a few things occurred. I don't know really a lot of what took place during those years. Meaning we have the outline of what the Prophet ﷺ was doing, the outline of what the Sahaba were doing, but do we have specific events or incidents? No, but that's how life is. And the idea that the incidents or the events or the occurrences in your life are going to be equally spread out over time and everything is not how it works. Like, just so you know, it's not gonna. That's why there are these sayings like when it rains, it pours. Right? Where does this come from? It's because it happens a lot like that in life, where just a lot of things happen all at once. So we have talked a little about the journey to Ta'if. I talked about Addas. I think that's where I ended. I believe that's where I ended. So in the Imam Bukhari's collection, the Prophet ﷺ was asked, but what was the most difficult day of your life? And one of the things he said, in the collection of Imam Bukhari, قال ما لقيت منهم يوم أعرض نفسي على ابن عبد يليل ابن عبد كلال. The day that I went and I presented myself to the sons of Ibn Abd Yalil, which are the leaders of Ta'if. That was the worst. And another narration, and I think I put it here for you. Yeah, it's the wording for it is a little bit specific, and this is one of my one of the most significant hadith in my opinion. I quote this quite often, so people kind of get bored of hearing me talk about it. قال وكان أشد ما لقيت منهم يوم العقبة إذ عرضت نفسي على ابن عبد يليل أوليل عبد يليل ابن عبد كلال فلم يجبني إلى ما أردت فانطلقت وأنا مهموم على وجهي فلم أستفق إلا وأنا بقرن الثعالب. So in this hadith, Aisha, when he asks him she asks him what was the worst day for you after Uhud. So he tells her it wasn't Uhud. Uhud wasn't my worst day. The worst day was the day of Aqaba. When I went to that's how he calls it. That's what he called it. When he went to speak to these people in Ta'if, and then he says very specifically after that, فانطلقت وأنا مهموم على وجهي. Oh, and another narration قال وأنا هائم على وجهي. And that means that he was walking aimlessly, alayhi salatu wasalam. The way he words it is that he was walking, like he left Ta'if, knowing that like after that whole thing with Addas happened, now they have to clean up and go back. He already knows that the people of Ta'if sent someone to tell Quraysh. Quraysh now knows that he went asking for help from Ta'if. The Ta'if and Thaqif and Hawazin, the tribes there, had tried to raid Mecca in the past. So they played this as if it was treason. Like they played this as a betrayal, that he went and spoke to our enemies, our rivals, try to get, and they played that in Mecca, and it made him look very bad, alayhi salatu wasalam. And because of that, they were able to pass a law or pass a judgment that he was banned from coming into Mecca. So he wasn't allowed into Mecca. His daughters are in Mecca. He has children who he has to take care of. He has with him a young boy. The guy Zayd ibn Haritha is with him. So what is he going to do? Like for him, I was just walking aimlessly. For him, wallahu a'lam, the reason this was the most difficult part for him in his life, and I think this psychologically is very, very interesting to understand him, alayhi salam, is because he had no plan at that moment. He was a person who, as long as there was a plan and he was doing what he could, he was fine. Even if it was failing, even if the plan wasn't good, even if he was in pain and the things were being, you think it was backfiring, he didn't mind that, alayhi salam. But he needed to have a solid plan of what to do next. When he left the Ta'if, he didn't know what to do. For a while there, he wasn't sure what's the next step. And that loss, like that sense of that sensation of loss or aimlessness, or was what bothered him. Wallahu alam the most, alayhi salam. I don't think it was the disrespect of the people of Ta'if, because he was, he got a lot of that before and after. Like he got a lot of that, alayhi salam. This honestly, this was not the worst in my opinion that has happened to him. But I think it was that sense of loss, where he was, Biqarn al-Tha'alib is the name of the valley that he was walking in. Like he was walking in the valley between Ta'if and Mecca, and for a moment there, he just felt he lost. Like, what do I do? I've run out of options. I don't know where to go. I can't go home. I can't go back. I don't doesn't have a plan, alayhi salatu wasalam. And that just so what happened all these that night was that Jibreel would come and wake him, would come and speak to him and he brought with him Malak al-Jibal, the angel of the mountains. And he says, Ya Muhammad, يعني مرني أطبق عليهم الأخشبين. Give me the command and I will crumble the two great mountains upon them, upon the people of Al-Ta'if and the people of Quraysh, يعني, and just يعني, kill them all. Like, we'll end them all. If you want, well, that's what we'll do after what they had done to him عليه الصلاة والسلام. فقال عليه الصلاة والسلام, the very famous يعني, response, قال بل أرجو أن يخرج الله من أصلابهم من يعبد الله وحده لا يشرك به شيئا. No, I hope and I have I have hope in the future that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring forward from their descendants, from them people who will say La ilaha illallah. And I always, when I think about this, this wording, it's very meaningful, that he would say this, alayhi salatu wasalam. But when I think about it, I think about the fact that we came here, like we what he wanted occurred. We're here. That's exactly what he was hoping for. Allah alam, who knows what your great grandparents were doing? You don't know. Judging from my, I have an idea, what they were up to. So I have very little hope that my grandparents were, Zubayr and Talha and Sa'id, probably on the other side of the rails. But the Prophet ﷺ made sure that he didn't allow his personal, personal need for vengeance or, the injustices that happened to him. He didn't let that cloud his judgment and make him someone who's he's spiteful and he wants to seek revenge. He just said, no, leave them. Inshallah, one day they'll say La ilaha illallah. Even though at that moment he's lost, this would fix his loss. This would have fixed his loss. Khalas, he could just go back, we can just walk right back into Mecca. Right? And it would be a alama to Yawm al-Qiyamah that people of Ta'if are gone, and the people who disrespected him, and no more leaders of Quraysh. But there's a lot of, but he didn't accept that, alayhi salatu wasalam. Another incident that occurred during this journey is that the Prophet ﷺ, that night, he spent it in Qiyam, al-Layl, which is another aspect of his character. That he didn't sleep the night of this happening. Zayd slept, he wakes up for his Qiyam like every night. He wakes up and performs his Qiyam al-Layl, even though he's on a journey where he was not prepared to sleep outdoors anyways at the time, by the way. The whole trip should have taken a day. Like he should have been home by nightfall. So he did not take with him. I told you, he acted like he was going on a picnic. So he didn't take anything with him. Didn't have a horse, didn't have a camel, and did not bring with him anything that will allow him to sleep outdoors. So now, but he's stuck outdoors. So he had to figure out a place for him and Zayd to sleep for the night so they can figure out the next morning what to do. Jibreel came, brought Malak al-Jibal, but did not bring with him a plan of what to do. Like, he didn't tell him, by the way, you don't want to, punish them? Well, then do this so he can get back in. No, he just left. So the Prophet ﷺ had to figure out what he was going to do. But that night he did Qiyam al-Layl, which tells you something about how he understands his own relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it was that time, that night specifically, where he was referring to Qiyam al-Layl, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَإِذْ صَرَفْنَا إِلَيْكَ نَفَرًا مِنَ الْجِنِّ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقُرْآنَ فلما حضروه قالوا أنصتوا فلما قضي ولوا إلى قومهم منذرين قالوا يا قومنا إنا سمعنا كتابا أنزل من بعد موسى مصدقا لما بين يديه يهدي إلى الحق وإلى طريق مستقيم يا قومنا أجيبوا داعي الله. The Quran points out in Surah Al-Ahqaf that when we sent to you a group of jinn listening to the Quran, and when they came to it, they say, listen. And they listened carefully. And when you finished, they went back to their people. And they told their people, oh, our people, we have heard a book. قل أوحي إلي أنه استمع نفر من الجن فقالوا إنا سمعنا قرآنا عجبا يهدي إلى الرشد فآمنا به ولن نشرك بربنا أحدا. And if you want to know more about this incident specifically and what happened, go back to the tafsir of Surah Al-Jinn that I did only a few months ago. It was not very long ago, where I talk about this in some degree of detail. But subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ is performing da'wah to the people of Quraysh, performing da'wah to the people of Ta'if, and no one's listening to him. Right? No one's accepting him. They're mistreating him. He stands up in Qiyam alayhi salatu wasalam, and a whole race and a whole species is introduced to Islam without even him knowing. He didn't know. He was not aware that the jinn were listening to him. He was just doing his salah, but they were impressed by what they saw. They understood what happened to him. They saw what he was doing, and then they listened to what he was saying, and then this is it. This is the real deal. This is what we've been looking for. So they accepted that, and then they went back to their people and they performed da'wah, and then those who accepted Islam from the jinn accepted Islam from the jinn. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the thaqalain, the two races or the two species, the ins, the human being, and the jinn, the other group that we don't have access to, they have access to us to a certain degree with waswasa. They can provoke thoughts in our minds. But aside from that, so we exist in two different realms to us, but we are the two creatures that have the ability to choose, to make we have free will. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that both are going to be held accountable. The jinn have been around for a much longer period than we have, and their experience is very different. They're not like us, and they don't have the same experience that we do in terms of iman and kufr and ta'ah. It's very different. Similar in the fact that they can choose, very different in terms of in the details that come with that. And the Prophet ﷺ, as a final messenger, was sent to both. Was sent to human beings and to jinn. Jinn had their own anbiya as well and their own stories, but the final was not from them, was from the human beings, and they were granted the ability to hear. And they heard him ﷺ during that night. Right? So he performed da'wah ﷺ and achieved success with it without even knowing he was performing da'wah, without even knowing who was doing it. And it was so as if, and to me, the way I look at this is that you will try to achieve certain things in life because that's your will. But then there's the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he has sometimes other plans for you. So the Prophet ﷺ wanted Al-Arab to accept Islam, and Allah wanted Addas, the little boy from Nainawa, to hear him talk about Yunus and to accept Islam. The Prophet ﷺ wanted al-Ta'if. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted Yathrib. The Prophet ﷺ was speaking to human beings. That's what he wanted them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted the jinn for him. You don't know. Okay, you don't know what's in the cards for you, and you don't know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has in plan for you. So you just plan things out to the best of your ability, execute to the best of your ability, and reevaluate as you go along and try to do your best. And then the blocks will fall where they will in life. Things will go bi'aqdarillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Things will occur, and almost never do your plans actually work out. Almost never. And some people, because of this, think there's no point of planning. But no, you can't. You always have to have a plan. It always has to be a good one. And it has to have good intention behind it. It has to be well thought. Knowing that most of the time it's not going to work out that way. You're going to have to refine this a number of times as you go along, as he did, alayhi salatu wasalam. So the next morning, when he woke up, they get close to the outskirts of Mecca, and obviously he's denied entrance, and he threatened to be killed if he enters. So he's thinking what to do, and he ends up coaching Zayd. So Zayd, at the ripe age of 15 or 16, was going to go into Mecca, because he wasn't banned from Mecca. Only the Prophet _والسلام was. Zayd was a kid; he could enter. So he coached him to go and speak to certain people in Mecca, requesting jiwar. Jiwar is some degree of protection, right? So he can enter Mecca. He is forced, alayhi to request the protection of people in Mecca to enter it. So the Prophet is strategically choosing people whom are wealthy and have status, but are not of the degree of Abu Jahl and Abu Sufyan and Uqba and all the bigger names, the people who kind of the nobles and rulers of Mecca. There's always going to be rivals to every ruler. There's always going to be someone who has that ambition, who would like to replace the person who's actually in command, right? So the Prophet ﷺ had that knowledge. He knew exactly who was envious of these people. So he strategically told Zayd, go talk to 1, 2, 3, 4. You have to talk to these people. One of them will for sure see an opportunity in protecting me by spiting, just for the point of spiting Abu Jahl or spiting one, not because they care, but just they want to spite. But Zayd still had to be coached, because he has to go and present himself. You can't just walk into a nobleman's house and just start speaking. You have to know how to address, what to say at first, how to present yourself. And I always think about this, like we have 16-year-olds in our community and 15-year-olds, and they don't even know how to open the door and tell someone to come in. They don't know how to do the basics of just giving salams to a person. How did Zayd is going to go knock on the door of a nobleman, ask for permission to speak to him, sit there, present himself appropriately, address him respectfully, request this very difficult, very specific thing. He has to also kind of play it. He has to sell it to the guy of why he should protect the Prophet ﷺ. He will do he will have all 4 attempts, meaning he'll be sent to 4 people, and it'll be the 4th person who actually listens. So he has to do this 4 times, before, and it proved, it showed a certain degree of character that Zayd had, but also the Prophet ﷺ's trust in the younger generation. Like this wouldn't. If I were in his position and I had with me a 16-year-old, that wouldn't even be an option. Like the idea of sending him in to speak to people, no, I don't want to get both of us killed. I'll figure something out. Yeah, it's not gonna. But it was an option to him, alayhi salatu wasalam. I'm not belittling my, but we have not trained them or prepared them or shown any degree of trust in them so that they could, so they can reach the potential that they are capable of reaching. Because Zayd went and he did this, and it was the last person in Mut'im ibn Adi that he was able to influence and forth. The way I think about it, actually, this story, is that the first attempt, he didn't do very well. The second attempt, he got a little bit better. The third attempt, he got better. The fourth attempt, Zayd had it perfectly. He knew exactly. Like he had learned from all the mistakes of the first 3 times he did this. So he went in and he nailed it. He did everything right. He made every step appropriately, getting exact what he needed from the guy in front of him. And it shows you even the ability to grow and to improve. So Al-Mut'im ibn Adi offered the Prophet ﷺ protection. So the Prophet ﷺ would enter Mecca, surrounded by the sons and followers of Al-Mut'im, all in full armor and swords, and the Prophet ﷺ right in the middle. SubhanAllah, that's how he would enter Mecca. And the nobles of Quraysh would get very offended because فَقَالُوا أَصَبَأْتَ يَا مُطْعِم, have you now become a Muslim? فَقَالَ لَا وَلَكِنَّهُ فِي جِوَارِي. Nope, but he is in my protection. فَقَالَ مَا كَانَ فِي جِوَارِكَ فَلَا بَأْسَ. If it's just protection, then fine. They were tired, honestly, at this point. It was 10 years of they didn't have it in them to continue to fight, but they just need to know that not another person is now following him. They're just happy. It's just protection, fine. And the Prophet ﷺ insisted, one of the conditions is he insisted that he needed to pray in front of the Kaaba before he went home. That was his. He insisted that I have to pray in the Kaaba. So actually, one of the refusals of the 4 guys was like, we're not going to support that. Like, we'll take it home, but we're not going to support you praying in front of the Kaaba. He said no. So he told Zayd, no, don't accept. We need to pray in front of the Kaaba. The reason, Wallahu alam, I don't know. This is not something he said, alayhi salam. This is just a thought. My reading is that he didn't want it to seem as if he was ashamed of what happened or embarrassed. He's going to run home and hide himself for a few days until it kind of blows over and people forget about it. No, he's going to go and he's going to pray right in front of the Kaaba, openly, publicly. He's not embarrassed of what occurred. He's not ashamed that he went to a Ta'if and he requested protection from them trying to murder him. And he doesn't feel bad that he's not ashamed that they mistreated him and kicked him out and that he was banned from coming to Mecca. He is not ashamed of himself or what he's doing, alayhi salatu wasalam. And he needs to make it very clear. Because if he was right to Mecca, his home, people were like, of course he's going to hide himself now for a few days out of fear. No, he didn't want that. Yeah, so he insisted to pray in front of the Kaaba, alayhi salatu wasalam, and then go home. And that was the story. That's basically, in a nutshell, kind of the story of Al-Ta'if. I just put a slide here, and I do this every. You'll find these slides, these sporadic slides throughout the course, just for your own. When you talk about the sources of Sirah, it's important to also know that aside from the 4 books that we pointed out, Ibn Ishaq and Ibn Hisham al-Waqidi and Tariq al-Tabari, in addition to the books that I taught you about, Dala'il al-Nubuwwa al-Asbahani, Dala'il al-Nubuwwa al-Bayhaqi, Tabaqat ibn Sa'd, all these books. In addition to all these, the collections of hadith. The collections of hadith are a very, very important source of the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. Oh, it's not... I think if I just refresh, it seemed to have worked last time. There you go. Yeah, refreshing works. So these books of hadith are a very important source of seerah. Now, why is it that maybe Ibn Hisham and Al-Waqidi and Ibn Ishaq didn't use them? Is because many of these books of hadith had not been written yet. Like Ibn Ishaq's book predates the Sahih al-Bukhari by 100 years, almost, if not more, right? So Ibn Hisham's book predates Sahih Muslim by 100 years or more. So you can say, well, why didn't they use them? Because the guy who wrote the book hadn't been born yet. That's why he didn't use these books. So the books of Sirah came before the books of Hadith by far. But for us, as people who are the generations that came later that are going to write the seerah or going to with a fine comb go through all of the events, we not only have the books, the collections of seerah that were specifically written for the biography of the Prophet ﷺ, we have the sunnah, like the actual books of sunnah. So really, when you study seerah today, and you're going to write, and if you're going to author something within that field or study it, you have to be taking from both sources. You can't just choose one source and say that's all. You can't say the seerah is only going to be taken from the Prophet ﷺ's books of hadith and sunnah. You're going to get completely lost. There's going to be so many gaps there, you're not going to be able to do it. And if you only use books of seerah with no with no dependence on the books of hadith and no verification from the books of hadith, then you will end up with a lot of stories that have no authenticity and are almost contradicting things we know authentically occurred. So today, when we talk about seerah, we have to use both sources. So as I pointed out, obviously, the number one source of seerah is what? The Quran, the number one, so that's number one. But then after that, we have to understand what we're using here. So books of seerah, I say number two. Some people say, no, it should be books of hadith. No, it's books of seerah, because these books were written way before, and they were specifically for this purpose. They weren't for, because the books of sunnah and hadith aren't always just for seerah. Actually, many of them don't care about that. Most of them don't care when the hadith occurred, because if you care about seerah, then you would tell me, when did it happen? What was going on? What year was this? They don't care. They will narrate the hadith with you almost context free sometimes. It makes it difficult. So not all of the books of sunnah and all of the hadith within those books can be used for seerah, but definitely you need to use. So Bukhari and Muslim, the Sunan, so Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, Abu Dawood, Ibn Majah, the Musnad, Imam Ahmad, and Imam al-Haythami, his collection is called Majma' al-Zawaid. So these books specifically, you should know. You should know their names. If you don't know what's in them, at least know that these are books that are heavily dependent upon for seerah. And I just want to share that with you. So what occurred afterwards is seen by many scholars as a way for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to soften the blows the Prophet ﷺ had received that year. The loss of Abu Talib and Khadija and the horrific journey of Ta'if and the being denied entry to his own city. These were heavy things, and the Prophet ﷺ was at a low point in his life, as he pointed out. Like when he was thinking of his life and he was asked what was the worst day of your life, and they assumed Uhud, he said no, Uhud was fine. Uhud was jihad, was a ma'rakah. If I died that day, I died. I know what I'm doing, I know why I'm doing it. There's no problem. It was that year, and that day when I finally felt I was lost. No wife, no uncle, no home, nothing. Like I felt like I'd lost everything. And you see it in his words, in his dua that he made, alayhi salatu wasalam, that ilayka ashku. I raise my complaints to you, because I don't know who else to go to. I have no one to go to, and I'm completely lost. And there are moments like that in life, for sure. So he talks about that year being that way. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it up for him, to him, as far as I can tell, and this is the opinion of scholars, with Isra, with the and Imam Bukhari, obviously, the stories of Isra and Mi'raj exist in the books of Sirah, obviously, very clearly, but it's easier to study them from the books of Hadith, because the books of Hadith actually cover them quite heavily. So Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, they cover, and I have all the narrations for you here translated, so you can take a look, take some time and take a look at them. What I'm going to, I'm just going to tell you the story, quickly. Where's the? All right, I'll just tell you the story quickly, inshallah. So the story. And please read these slides so that you have you can see the difference a little bit between the narration of Imam Bukhari, narration of Imam Muslim, and then the narration of Ibn Hisham. There are slight variations in the way that these stories are told, but the gist of them are pretty much the same. The Prophet ﷺ was either sleeping in his house or the house of Hani, or sleeping in the house in front of the Kaaba. We don't know, but we know that Jibreel came and woke him up, and he asked him to drink. He gave him two drinks, and one had khamr and one had milk. So the Prophet ﷺ chose the milk. فَقَالَ هُدِيتَ إِلَى الْفِطْرَةِ. You have been guided to always choose that which is natural, that which is pure. وَهُدِيَتْ أُمَّتُكَ. And your nation after you will also be guided to that which is pure and natural. وَلَوْ غَوَيْتَ لَغَوَتْ أُمَّتُكَ. And if you chose the tampered drink, then your ummah would have also done the same thing. Because the problem of khamr, aside from the intoxication, is that it's tampered with. Someone came and ruined something. It was once this was once grapes and dates and stuff that that there have khayr in them, but someone tampered with them and then ruined them and turned them into something that's harmful. So he would perform tawaf around the Kaaba, and then Jibreel alayhi salam would take the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam on two distinct journeys. So Isra and Mi'raj. So there are two things. Which of the two is more which is better? Which is the better journey? Clearly Mi'raj, because he's going up to the heavens. Isra took him to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, and then from Masjid Al-Aqsa he went to the heavens, alayhi salam. So the second journey is obviously the one that has more impact, but both are important. And actually, we don't have a surah in the Quran called Mi'raj. We have Ma'arij, but that's not talking about that one. But we have a surah called Isra, which starts Subhanalladhi Asra bi-abdihi, and it points out the Prophet alayhi salam's night journey. We've got the Buraq alayhi salatu wasalam, which is as he describes it, a dabba bayna al-baghli wal-hisan. It is an animal smaller than a horse, bigger than a mule. It was white, and he would say, كان فيضع قدمه عند يعني منتهى بصره. So he travels as fast as you can see the horizon. So every step is a horizon. So which is the speed of sound or something similar. So it would take a few minutes for him to get to Al-Quds. He would arrive at Al-Quds alayhi salatu wasalam, middle of the night. He would again, all these details you'll find in the stories here. I'm not going to go through them one by one because we'll never finish, but please read them. And he would tie Al-Buraq to one of the doors, which is an interesting detail because what are the odds that this animal runs away? He says it's brought by Jibreel alayhi salam, but he tied him up anyways. And it just shows you the reason I point out these little details to you, because it shows you a certain aspect of his character and mentality alayhi salatu wasalam. He always did what he needed to do. Like he was never dependent. He was an independent person who always did his part. He always assessed what is expected of him, what he should be doing. He did that. He didn't wait for others to serve or bring, or that. It's just what he thought. This is the animal I was brought. It's appropriate that you tie him before you go, even though he's not going to run away and say, it's not my problem. Jibreel brought me here. He'll take me back. But he doesn't think that way, alayhi salatu wasalam. And that is a very distinct characteristic of how he was, alayhi salatu wasalam. Very independent and very responsible. And he behaved like that all throughout his life. And it's a beautiful thing to embed in people's minds. It would be lovely if we, one of the biggest problems at homes with children is that there's no initiative and there's no responsibility. And if something's spilled on the floor, the whole family will walk around it for years. Well, for years, if no one cleans it, it'll turn into a colony of bacteria and fungus, and no one will touch it because there's a lack of that feeling responsible for something, being a champion of a cause, feeling that this is mine. I'll take care of this. That's a very important thing to have. That in life in general, the feeling that I am. You're not waiting for someone else to do it. You're not waiting for someone else to pick it up, or hoping that someone else puts up their hand, or hoping someone else does it. No, you're going to do it because you feel responsible. You're the champion of this cause. You're the champion of this. And that's a very. I'll tell you, one of the things I admire of the generation of my father and my grandfather was that they just didn't have that dependence in them. They didn't have that mentality. They just get up and do stuff, and then I don't know. We came along, and it doesn't feel the same way. So they enter into the Quds, into the Masjid Al-Aqsa, and it's the middle of the night, and Allah Subhanahu wa Taala had stacked the masjid with all of the prophets of previous nations. So all of them were there. Yusuf alayhi salam, and Ibrahim alayhi salam, and Ismail, and Isa alayhi salam. All of the prophets were there spiritually. And the Prophet ﷺ was asked to go and pray rak'atayn, to lead two rak'ahs as an imam. And so he did. And that was it. That's all we have from this. We don't have any other details about this journey aside from that one action. And then after that, he was taken on this heavenly journey, on the Mi'raj, on the ascendance. Why did he do this? Scholars talk about this quite often. It was symbolic for a few things. It was symbolic that all of the prophets are one family. They all function the same way. None of them. There was no prophet who brought something different. No prophet claimed something different. No, all of them were the same. And it was symbolic to handing over the baton, the responsibility of so all these prophets carried the same responsibilities of calling people to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, teaching people of who God was and what he was. And now it was going to be handed over to him, alayhi salatu wasalam, and his followers, because there are no prophets who are going to come. There's no need for this. If there was a second prophet that was going to, or a messenger to come after him, there would be no need. But because he's the last one, because once he passes away, it's no longer going to be passed on to another prophet. It's not going to go to a single person. It's going to go to a nation of human beings. So it was a handing over. Here, it's all yours now. You and the people who follow you will be responsible for this legacy till the day of judgment, the end of time. You're responsible because no more messengers. And that, I think, is very important. And of course, the symbolism of the importance of the Holy Land, of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, that this is a significant heart of the world for prophecies and for Iman and for Islam and for him alayhi sallam, and his followers, and it gives it that that sanctity. The time that the Masjid al-Aqsa, al-Quds, Jerusalem, is talked about in the Quran isn't the surah that's called Isra. So it tied up that significance for us from a religious perspective, which is why Palestine is not just an issue of injustice and oppression and apartheid, and no, it's also a religious issue to us. Like it's also a religious issue for us that we carry. That's why it gets more attention than other causes. And I'm not saying that the blood of a Palestinian is more valuable to us than the blood of a Sudanese or an Afghani or anyone else. Honestly, that's absurd. And all Muslims are equal, and all human beings are equal. Really, there's no one's blood is more valuable than the other person. Muslim, Jewish, Christian, doesn't make a difference. But for us as Muslims, the sanctity of the land of Al-Aqsa in Jerusalem is where there's a second layer to this story. There's the social injustice and political injustice that occurred in Palestine, and there's a religious significance for it, which I think brings that it becomes and I believe that as a cause, it centralizes us as Muslims. It really does. Like as Muslims, we are all in agreement for at least this cause. Many of us may not even understand the other causes. Like I up till maybe last year, the Syrian conflict was something that I understood obviously very deeply. It affected me extremely profoundly on a personal level. I don't expect you to necessarily understand it or to feel the same way about it. It's not fair for me to do that. You don't have enough information. You didn't grow up there. You don't know what's going on. It's not fair for me to expect it. You have to stand by the Syrian people and speak of them like you speak of. No, what do you know about this? It's not fair. Same thing goes for almost every other conflict. People come to me from. There are Muslims are under pressure everywhere. Like honestly, the number of places that are problematic and suffering, whether it's Afghanistan or Pakistan or Kashmir or the Uyghurs or Myanmar and Burma, or go to Africa and Ethiopia and Eritrea and Sudan and Sudan. It's ongoing conflicts and Muslims that are not being treated well. But I don't know enough about these conflicts. I don't understand them well. I'm not in the midst of it. I don't know who's. Sometimes you show me a conflict in this country. I'm like, who's right here and who's wrong? I don't know. Like they're both Muslim, or at least they look the same. I have no idea. But Palestine is not. It's a very different. It's very distinct. It's not only the injustice of. It's not only racial injustice. It's the Europeans deciding that they are going to own land in the middle of the Muslim world, literally in the heart of the Muslim world, surrounded by Muslims from everywhere aside from the sea. And even the sea is Muslim, you're surrounded by them, but they don't, and deciding that this is going to be, and killing and people, and then after all, and the religious piece, where it turns into a country where only a certain religious group is allowed. It changes. That became central for all of us. Like we all feel. So I'm not Palestinian, right? But as we said, like during the last 3 years, like we're all Palestinian. Like we are. You ask where you come from. Palestinian. We're all Palestinian because it's an issue of a cause that we believe in. Hopefully that will change. Not just the cause itself, but also our understanding of Muslim sufferings in the world, so that we can be more empathetic towards one another and stand by one another better. I think that's why going to Al-Aqsa was symbolic. And from there, he would ascend alayhi salatu wasalam to the skies. He would meet all of these prophets up there. I usually give this as an hour lecture. And I used to go around doing an hour just talking about this experience. The hadith in the collection of Imam Muslim, for example, is quite short. Like it's not very long. He would just go to the first guy and see Adam alayhi salam, and there's a small little incident. And then you see Yahya and Isa, Jesus and John in the second sky. And then you would see Joseph or Yusuf in the third sky, and then Idris in the fourth, and then Harun in the fifth, and then Musa in the sixth, and then Ibrahim in the seventh. And they're pretty short. But what I would do with this is I would say, I am 100% sure that he had a conversation with them, alayhi salatu wasalam. I know he did. It's impossible. You're telling me he went that far, entered into this heaven, spoke to Yusuf, and didn't say anything? That was it? And just sat there staring awkwardly at him for the next 5 minutes and then left? Or did they talk? I know they did. Right? We just don't have it all narrated. I have a few narrations. We know a little thing that happened with Adam alayhi salam. He was looking at his progeny, all of his children. And he would look to the right and sob and smile, and look to the left and sob. And it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showing him the children that made the right choices, and they were going to be rewarded, and he was happy with that. And then the children who didn't, he would be sad. So he got to see that, alayhi salatu wasalam, what it meant. But the idea is that each of these prophets, there was a reason why he was speaking to them. It was in prep for him, alayhi salatu wasalam. Each of them was very unique in their experience. They did something in their lives that he was going to need once he left Mecca. Because the story is really interesting. I would think if I was in his position, if you received prophethood at 40, so it's not like you're a spring chicken, you're 40 years old, right? And then you spend 10 years doing it, and someone to tell you, oh, hasn't even started yet. If somebody came and told you it hasn't even begun yet, you have no idea what's coming. Like the really exciting part of your life, the crazy part of your life is 4 or 5 years away. What? I'm 50. Like I'm 50. What do you mean? And it was, if you think about it, Badr and Uhud and Khandaq, right? And Khaybar and Mu'tah and Hudaybiyah and Tabuk and Hunayn and Fath Makkah and maybe 3 or 4 other battles, major incidents that occurred during his life, all happened in Medina. You're going to build a country, you're going to build a masjid, you're going to fight the Romans, you're going to, Latif. People sometimes we don't know. Umar al-Mukhtar, by the way, you should. There's a movie. Anthony Quinn was the only actor who acted out Muslim characters. He acted Hamza. He acted out Umar al-Mukhtar. So he acted out Umar al-Mukhtar. So it's worth knowing his story. Umar al-Mukhtar fought the Italians in Libya for years, and he didn't. It wasn't through him that the salvation or the revolution actually succeeded. Happened after him, but he was definitely one of the biggest sparks of it. He started fighting them after the age of 72, and he began to fight the Libyans. The Italians, he was beyond 70 when he began. He spent a decade doing this. So you never know what part of your life is. You don't know how long you're going to live or when things are going to be shown. The Prophet ﷺ is 50, and the show hasn't even begun. These last 10 years, they're nothing. Wait until you're digging a trench. Wait until you're digging a trench that's 5 kilometers long so that you don't get absolutely destroyed by 10,000. Wait until you send 3,000 people to fight a 250,000 populated army somewhere north of wait, you have no idea what's coming. Wait until you're lying down in that ditch with a broken tooth and you completely with a concussion in the middle of right beside Uhud. We'll talk, then we'll chat. Right. So there's a lot coming his way, alayhi salatu wasalam. So he met all the prophets who had unique experiences. And I'm sure that that they shared them. Like I'm sure. I don't know. I don't have evidence to tell you what was said, but I know because the choices. Why were these prophets chosen? I mean, there's some prophets here that he didn't meet Nuh. So you can't say it's based on status. Right? If it's based on status, then if you have Nuh, Ibrahim, Musa, Isa, Muhammad, he had to have met Nuh. But it's interesting. No Nuh in this whole. Why? Not because Nuh is not worth me. No, he's one of the greatest prophets of all time. But there was no specific experience that Nuh had that the Prophet ﷺ needed specifically from him, like something unique. But Idris, which is a prophet, what do you know with Idris? I could run a Kahoot with Idris and you would all fail. You know nothing about Idris alayhi. Honestly, you don't know anything. Like unless you've studied him, unless you spend time studying him specifically, you wouldn't know anything about him. He's not a very famous prophet. He's in the Quran once. وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ إِدْرِيسَ إِنَّهُ كَانَ صَدِّيقًا نَبِيًّا وَرَفَعْنَاهُ مَكَانًا عَلِيًّا. Bye-bye. That's it. That's all we got about him. Right? We don't. Why is he meeting Idris? Because Idris was the first mujahid. The first person to get on a horse and fight for the sake of Allah was Idris. Never before. Never did a prophet have to bear arms for the sake of Allah. Never. So he was the first man. And he was the first person to document, like to write things. And of course, the Quran is here today because it was written. So he got to meet the guy who had those two experiences. Very clearly. Yusuf. Why Yusuf? Yusuf ruled a foreign land. Yusuf ruled a foreign land and was betrayed by his relatives. Right? Exactly what happened to him, alayhi salatu wasalam. So Musa, easy. I don't need to tell you Musa. Musa, he's obviously, the parallels there's too many parallels between the Prophet alayhi salatu and Musa. But Harun alayhi salam, Harun was the orator of his people. He was the alim. Musa alayhi salam was the man doing this. Harun alayhi salam was different. Harun was the alim, he was the orator, he was the teacher. The Prophet alayhi salam, this is up till now, it's not, hasn't been that. In Medina, it's going to turn into exactly that. Every time, if he sneezes, alayhi salatu wasalam, 15 people are watching to see how he's going to do it. And they're going to tell us about it. And it's going to turn into a sunnah. It's going to turn into a way of life. So he had to know exactly what it meant to be the empathetic, easygoing teacher. The person he's going to be a khatib from now on. He's going to get on a minbar every single Friday till the day he dies, alayhi salatu wasalam, to speak to people. Musa couldn't put a two sentence together. Like Musa alayhi salam couldn't speak at all. Like that wasn't his wasn't his strength. His strength was not to stand in front of people to speak. If there's a bunch of people needed to speak, Da'ya Harun, here, tell them this. Musa alayhi salam would stand there being intimidating and everyone would listen to Harun, right? But the Prophet alayhi salam had to speak, so every one of these prophets had so you can go back to my lecture, like the lectures, and listen to them if you really want to know, and it takes me usually 2 lectures to go through all of them. They're really interesting stories, and I find them fascinating to think about it. But he, alayhi salam, was going to meet the prophets. He met Jesus, obviously, for many reasons. He met the people that he needed to meet. In preparation, he didn't know yet. You have to remember this. You know what's coming next. You know that in 3 years he's going to be going to Medina. He didn't know yet, alayhi salam. He had no idea. He tells us that year I didn't. I was lost. I didn't know what was happening. So he had no plan. He didn't know what we're going to do. We do, but he didn't. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, come to the sky. If the people on earth aren't treating you well, they don't understand your status. So Allah said, come to the sky and see how much you're loved here, and see how much you're respected here in the sky. And take it easy. And here meet all these guys who had similar lives, went through similar things. Talk to them for a little bit. You'll probably find that helpful. So he did. He spoke to all of them, and then he learned things from them, unknowingly that this is going to come in very handy later on. Isn't that why the time Abu Sufyan comes and tells him, as the brothers of Yusuf told Yusuf, immediately the Prophet ﷺ, without missing a beat, لا تثريب عليكم. He answered like Yusuf because he was coached before. He learned. This is something he knew. That's what Yusuf did when he was presented with this predicament, when his relatives betrayed him. The Prophet ﷺ has a heavy sense of betrayal. And he looks at these people of Quraysh like, you're my family. How could you? What have I done for you to want to kill me? Well, I've challenged a few crappy ideas that you all know are garbage. You all know these are garbage ideas. You know riba is garbage. You know zina is garbage. You know asnam are garbage. Just because I had the guts to point them out, you're going to kill me? But you forgot? No, what I did for you at that. He never used these words, alayhi salatu wasalam, by the way. He never ever used them, but he had them. The favors he had done for Abu Sufyan, the favors he had done for Abu al-Hakam ibn Hisham, the favors he did for these people, the services he offered them and their families, and then they try to kill him and they kick him out. A deep sense of betrayal that he never ever expressed. He carried that pain alone, alayhi salatu wasalam. He never spoke of it. But he would point out, Arhami, you're my family. How could you? How could you do this to me? But that's why when Waraq bin Nawfal told him, yukhrijuk, they're going to have you, kick you out. The only thing that bothered him, they're going to kick me out. They don't believe in me, fine. They push against, fine, they're family. You expect nothing less from family. They're going to be obnoxious and annoying and push you and all that. But kick me out, like actually remove me, displace me from my home? Why? To him, that was like an ultimate betrayal that he could not imagine they would do for him. Why? Because of how he lived his life with them, alayhi salatu wasalam, which is why he had to meet Yusuf. Because Yusuf was thrown into a well by his brothers and they walked away. And they never told their father. For 40 years, they could have told it, never did. They never came clean. So the Prophet ﷺ saw an example of betrayal. He was like, okay. I understand. I can't beat that one. Like that's pretty bad. What did you do? What did you do? Huh? What did you do? I made sure that I kept my family together. I didn't let Yusuf. I made sure that I did not throw them in jail. I didn't punish them. I didn't lash out with my anger at them. I actually set things up so they would realize their mistake, ask for forgiveness. I would offer it to them, and my whole family would come together again. Right? Prophet ﷺ hears all that. That's exactly why. It's exactly what he's going to do. He does it exactly that way. He does not bring vengeance to Mecca. He doesn't burn the city down. He doesn't enter with blood and fire. He doesn't enter and kill the people. He forgives them all, right? It's actually quite fascinating to see all the parallels of how he learned and then exceeded alayhi sallam everybody with the level of and it's like, oh, that's how noble and graceful you were, mashallah, amazing. And then your ambition becomes, I'm going to try and be even more graceful, right? It's not to be better than you, but it's like it's like the competition is in grace. The competition is in being more selfless and being more empathetic, not so that you can look down on someone else, no, but so you can benefit from. It's like they went 100 and they're going to get you to go 200. Like push the limits of goodness a little bit farther, and that's what he did. Alayhi salam. Whenever he learned from them, he made sure he pushed the envelope a little bit farther and went a little bit far. Yeah, he did more than what he was told. Yeah, he was done, because usually what we end up doing in life is that you only go as far as you think others have gone. If they've gone that far, khalas, that's good. I'm not expected to go farther than that, right? That this is not. That's even how you're held accountable in the court of law. Like, what did you do? Did you do what is considered best practice, or what everyone else would do at that point? Khalas, then you're good. We almost and we like to justify it that way. I don't want to work too hard. What is everyone else doing? What is considered acceptable? I'll do that. No, not him, alayhi salam. That's not how prophets work. That's not how we're supposed to see things. How good were you? This is how good you were? MashaAllah, may Allah bless you. Barakallah feek. I'm going to try and be better. Not than you, but just push the envelope of goodness a little bit farther. And then someone else will come and see that, and then they'll try to do a little bit more. So what we're doing is we're competing in empathy. We're competing in grit, in perseverance, in generosity, in grace. So he met all of these graceful human beings, alayhi salatu wasalam, learned the lessons from them all, and then pushed the envelope a little bit farther. And we can never be better than him, alayhi salatu, but that's how we have to look at life. Learn from him and then try in our lives to be the best we can be. What is the limits here? Let's see if we can push that in being good. And of course, he would make it after Ibrahim alayhi salam. These all have stories that you should, you would meet Ibrahim alayhi salam in a beautiful story. And then he would be taken to a higher spot called Sidratul Muntaha. And they call this in the lote tree of the utmost boundary. So a sidra is a lote tree. Al muntaha is the end, is where there's no space anymore. There's nothing. That's it. There's nothing higher than this. This is the highest point possible. It's muntaha. It's ended. And of course, there's a reason. There's symbolism in the lote tree and all that. You can go back to these lectures and listen to it. But he would arrive there, and that's where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he would tell him that no creature before you has stood where you are standing. Not even Jibreel, my Holy Spirit, comes up here. Only you. And that was where he got to stand on. And then the ayat say, إِذْ يَغْشَى السِّدْرَةَ مَا يَغْشَى. And then the sidra, where he was smothered by whatever it was smothered with. That's what the Quran says. Like, what was it smothered with? There's no words and language to explain what he witnessed. When he was asked, alayhi salam, did you see Allah? He didn't know how to answer it. That's why we have this khilaf. Ibn Abbas and Aisha, they start to argue. He saw. No, he didn't. The reason is because the Prophet alayhi salam is like, I don't know what I witnessed. It's something that I can't, like, I know what I witnessed. I can't articulate for you what it is that there are no words. And he's a very articulate human being, but he's like, no, whatever it was that he witnessed up there is something that only he has the ma yaghsha. He just witnessed that. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called upon him and gave him the 50 prayers. And he would make it down to Musa alayhi salam, who barakallahu fihi wa jazahu anna khairan. May Allah bless Musa alayhi salam, told him 50. No, go back. You're not going to get 50. I've tried this before. And then we go back and forth a few times until 5 were the number. He come down again. Musa would tell him, go back 5. No, ask for like 1, 2 tops. That should be your limit. So the Prophet ﷺ say, no, I can't go back again. This is ridiculous. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala call upon him and say, Hiya khamsun fil adadi, khamsuna fil ajr. They're 5 in number and 50 in reward. And that's the hasana bi ashri amthaliha. And he would go back, alayhi salatu wasalam. The story that I'm trying to end this, 9 o'clock. So we'll end with this story. What we'll do is we'll end with this, with Isra and Mi'raj. I will adjust all of these slides. Your job will be just to read about Isra and Mi'raj. I'll put them in the slides. And the Hajj of the 10th year, which is the last incident in the 10th year, we'll start the next, the third part course with the Hajj of the 10th year, because a lot happened there. I thought I was going to get through it today, but we're not. So we'll just end with this. So I'll just ask you to read from Ibn Hisham or a modern source the stories surrounding Al-Isra wal Mi'raj, so that you have like a little bit of a understanding of it. But just to quickly summarize for you, when he came back, the problem was the next day, because he has to tell people. He can't keep this. He was commanded because the Quran was revealed. Subhanallah, Asra bi abdi. So the Quran is going to be a part of it. So he has to explain what actually occurred. And explaining this is impossible at a time where the fastest thing on earth is a horse. So it's very difficult to explain that he made it to Al-Aqsa, then went to the heavens, and then came back, and then came back again, and it was all within a few hours of the night. And he made it for breakfast. So he had to explain this to. This is the only time I have in Sirah that I can with certainty tell you a few people apostatized. Like a few people left Islam because of this. We don't have a lot of examples of this in Islam where people left the deen. Isra, when he explained this story, some people lost their faith and said, no, it didn't happen. Abu Bakr, in the famous story, was told, he said this, alayhi salam. So his answer is, if he said it, faqad sadaq. If he said it, I don't know, I have to go hear it from him. I don't trust you, you may be lying to me. But if he did say it, then he is honest and he is truthful. I trust him with more than that to begin with. That's fine by me. And he was called the Siddiq from that day forward. And the Prophet ﷺ tells us in the hadith that they asked him, do you have any proof what you say? Because Abu Jahl told him, are you willing to say this in front of everybody? Because he heard him talking, and he's like, you'll say this in front of everyone? Yes, I'll say this, of course. He can't lie. Wait. He goes, gathers as many people as possible in Mecca, because he wants to call us. This is like the slam dunk. This will discredit him forever. And he brings people, and the Prophet ﷺ tells him what he saw and who he met in the night journey. So they ask him, what's your proof? Tell us, what does Bayt al-Maqdis look like? What does Jerusalem look like? What does the Al-Aqsa look like? Because he had never been there in his life. It was known. Like people's journeys are known, so because it's hard to travel, and he had not made it ever in his life that high up, like that far to the north. The farthest he made it was like maybe Tabuk. He never actually went into Damascus, alayhi himself, or got there. His travels were all before that. So the Prophet alayhi said, he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presented to me Masjid al-Aqsa. So he could see it, like he just see like a vision of it. So he started to describe it as he's looking at it. And the people who had been there, you're looking at each other, that's exactly. And then he described the caravans that exist between there and then. And he told them that there's a caravan somewhere in this part that he went with this number of camels. This happened to it. These people died, that, whatever, and he'd come back with this number. And as he described, alayhi salam, it all came back exactly as he. So what did they say? They said this is sorcery. Of course, they're using the same thing that they do every time. So they called it sorcery, and that's basically the story of Isra wal Mi'raj. What's the takeaway piece of it for the Sahaba, aside from the lessons that he learned, alayhi salam, the lesson that we learned from studying it is Salah. Salah became it took its second evolution. So first of all, just Qiyam al-Layl, just 2 rak'ahs at a time at night. Now it's 2 rak'ahs at a time, but it's throughout the day. It's throughout the day. It's going to be given times. Then the third and final iteration of Salah will be with the form that we have today, which is 4 for Dhuhr, Sirran, 4 for Asr, Sirran, like all the details that we have about Salah. But back then, after Isra, it was 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 throughout the day. Right? And they would pray them that way. That was the first time that this happened. We'll end with that, inshallah. 9:05. I'll give you the rest of the night. Jazakumullah khair for attending the course. We will end with Isra wal Mi'raj as the final piece. I will adjust the slides to reflect that and to reflect the reading piece that I want you to look at. I'll also put in the slides the format of the exam and like what to prepare for over the next 2 weeks. Please make sure you show up for the day of the exam. You may not be able to accommodate other days. It's becoming difficult for us to accommodate a lot of days for exams due to space. And then make sure you not this semester, but the semester of May, we'll continue part 3. So if you want to continue with me to get the full credit for the first level, if you attended with the first part. Now, if you have not attended the first part, right, then I would advise that the next semester where I don't have a Sirah course, email asking to attend part 1 because it's all recorded, obviously, and then attend it online. And it's an easy course because the exam is a reflective piece. It's reflective. It's just what you learned, everyone passes the first part. Like there's nothing, it's simple. But attend it so that you can, when you attend the third part in May, you'll get the full credit, inshallah, for this course. That would be my advice to you. And if you would like to attend the hadith next semester, you're also welcome to do that. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. جزاكم الله خير وبارك الله فيكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.